Welcome to the Political Trenches, local government at work. We are continuing our journey in the leadership realm today. And this week, we are sitting down with the president of the Rural Municipal Administrators Association of Saskatchewan. But before we get into our interview, we have some insightful stories we're going to be diving into. But as always, Ian, how are you?
I'm good. Yeah, it seems like it's been a while since we last talked, but I guess really it hasn't. Yeah, it's been a decent couple of weeks. Although as we record and I look out my window and the snow continues to fall, I'm kind of wondering where the heck spring is.
Spring doesn't come until after Easter. That's how I've always thought of it when I moved to Alberta. But I want to dive into the stories because we have
Sure.
three important ones. Our first story is focusing on the important issue of the 45th general election here in Canada. Rebecca Alty, the current mayor of Yellowknife, will be the Liberal Party candidate in the Northwest Territories in the upcoming election. Alty was elected a city councillor in 2012. She served two terms on council before being elected mayor in 2018 and is currently in her second term as the city's leader. Alty said she is taking a leave from her mayoral duties, and Deputy Mayor Ben Henderson will be filling in for her as acting mayor. Now, a councillor in Guelph has also taken an unpaid leave of absence to make a run for Parliament Hill. Dominique O'Rourke has been tapped as the federal Liberal Party of Canada candidate in the riding of Guelph, Ontario, in the upcoming 45th general election. Now, earlier this month, O'Rourke posted on an update on social media stating, quote, I will not be monitoring this account from March 23rd to April 30th as I am taking an unpaid absence from Guelph City Council, end quote. And back closer to home in Edmonton, Mayor Amarjeet Sohi is running again for the Liberal Party of Canada in Edmonton Southwest. Mayor Sohi will take an unpaid leave of absence from his municipal duties during the campaign. Now, Ian, we are talking about three Liberal Party candidates, but I should note that I know that there is a NDP candidate in British Columbia. There are Conservative candidates across Canada who are municipally elected leaders who are also taking leave of absence. So this is not just a Liberal issue. This is an all-party issue. Just the stories we talk about today are three candidates who happen to be from the Liberal Party of Canada. So my first question I need to ask, is this a smart move for municipal leaders to take an unpaid leave of absence? Because, and I say this respectfully, in the majority of provinces and territories, there's no rule stating that you can't have one position while running for another, Ian.
Yeah, whether it's a smart decision or not will depend on the result of the election, I suspect. If they win, it was a smart decision. If they don't, it's not a smart decision. You made a point too about the leaves of absence. And while the rules may differ slightly from province to province or in the territories, typically these leaves happen once the writ has been dropped and they end one way or another after the election. So the period is pretty common. You pointed out two of the mayors, Mayor Sohi and Mayor Alty from Edmonton and Yellowknife, respectively. Those two interest me specifically because they are, of course, sitting mayors of capital cities in Canada. So they are leaving the big chair for a little while unoccupied, or at least handing over the reins to the acting mayors in both circumstances. And there are probably dozens of local elected officials who are likely running for all the parties across the country with this. It seems to be a rite of passage almost that when there's a federal election, we see sometimes provincial people, but perhaps more commonly local government people running for office.
Has there been moments in the past? Because I tried to do some research where city councilors haven't taken that leave of absence to run either provincially or federally. Because I tried to do some research before we go into this recording, and I couldn't find an example. Do you know of any examples where a councilor or a mayor or a reeve or a director would have not taken a leave of absence and it came back and bit them in the behind because there was that potential conflict of interest of who are you truly serving, the party or the people of your community?
I don't know that's necessarily a conflict of interest. Off the top of my head, no, I can't think of anybody who that's bitten. I will say, though, that there are cries of opportunism that come up whenever somebody who holds a current role in elected office is now aspiring to a different elected office. However, when somebody asked me about that earlier this week, I asked them in return, have they ever applied for a job while they still have a job? And in most circumstances, that the answer to that is yes, but we just don't have the application process for the new job being quite so public, nor do we have the existing job also being a public one too. So there's a matter of perspective and the public reaction that these candidates are likely to receive. And if you monitor social media, of course, a lot of them have received it or already. However, when we think about local elections versus the provincial and federal and territorial ones, the local elections are on a set date, so we can kind of plan around that. The federal and provincial ones aren't. They are within a period, but not a specific date. So those people who are aspiring to serve in parliament or even in legislatures don't really have the opportunity of knowing when the writ is going to be dropped, when the election is going to be happening. And in some cases, if there is a loss of confidence when the election happens on a completely off cycle as well. So I don't know that it's a big deal. To me, it's not a big deal. I understand it, but I can also understand why it would be something that is perceptually problematic.
It'll be an interesting story to watch unfold over the next few weeks. And we're going to head to our second story, which comes from CBC Nova Scotia. Victoria County Council is restoring public question and answer sessions after council meetings. In January, councillors decided to do away with them. They also stopped allowing comments on the county's Facebook page and ended live streaming of committee of the whole meetings, which Councillor Fraser Patterson said makes the county less transparent and less accountable to the general public. Now, at Monday's council meeting in Baddock, Patterson tried to have all three decisions reversed, but was only successful on the question and answer sessions. Now, we've had this for about 20 some years, said the councillor. Quote, we have never really had major incidents. Sometimes the discussion can get a little heated, but that's part of the process. That's part of democracy, end quote. Patterson said he's heard from some unhappy residents, and of the three council decisions, the ability for residents to question councillors is probably the most important one. Now, councillors voted unanimously to rescind their decision on that, but couldn't agree on what form the sessions should take. Now, Ian, in a democratic setting, which we are in a council meeting, hypothetically, where is the balance between maintaining respectful discourse and allowing heated, passionate discussions?
I don't know. So first of all, I need to say that Victoria County here is a client of mine. We spent a couple of days out with them in Cape Breton shortly after they were elected in, I think, November, early December. I am not a fan of question and answer sessions during part of council meetings, period. I just am not. And there are various ways that they can be done. They can be done openly. They can be done based on items that are on today's agenda, whatever. But we live in a representative democracy, not a direct democracy. And as such, there's a differentiation there for me. Decisions that are taken by councils in the long-term interest of the municipality may not be short-term popular decisions. And if they're being railed in a council meeting as part of making these types of decisions, I think it's problematic. If in reality, the person who wanted to ask the question, the Q part of the Q&A, was interested in a well thought out answer, it shouldn't really be a surprise question to anybody because you don't want somebody thinking necessarily just ad hoc or on their feet. If you provide a written question to council or if you get on the agenda as a delegation, to me, that has more impact than just a one-off question does if truly you're after the answer to that question. So I'm not a fan of Q&A.
So I'm going to play a little bit of devil's advocate with you for a
Sure.
second because I respectfully disagree with you a little bit because in a time where voter apathy, in the time of resident engagement apathy is at an all-time high, we do not see people attending town hall meetings. why should councils, why do you believe councils should stop that ability for residents to come in and question? Because if as a communicator, if I'm getting my information or if I'm getting my questions answered at a council meeting or a town hall, to me, that doesn't matter. What matters is I have the ability to ask those questions. And sometimes I can't attend a town hall meeting where one topic is being discussed. So if there's a scheduled council meeting where I know I can go in at 8 o'clock and I say, okay, next week I can go in at 8 o'clock and question my councillors, why wouldn't that be a good thing?
There are lots of opportunities to ask questions of counselors or administrators too, for that matter. There are often comment forms online. There are telephones and email addresses for people if you're truly curious about it. Just if you're not able to attend a committee meeting, chances are you can't attend a council meeting either. So it's six of one, half a dozen of the other. I don't know that I necessarily buy that particular argument. I would also say that the council meetings are not there as entertainment. It's not a show. It's a place where if people are interested, they can watch the transaction of business. It shouldn't be a bunch of gotcha questions. It shouldn't be the free for all that we have seen happen when things go off the rails quickly within a council because a bunch of people show up. And there's an epidemic of that beginning to happen. I think what Victoria County is doing here is potentially opening that door a crack again, where we see gotcha questions and we see media moments rather than well thought out debate amongst a group of people who know more about what's going on in their municipality than I do, or you do, or probably any of the residents of that municipality do, because they're privy to more information and they're thinking about it all the time. Whereas individuals may only have their one or two items of interest, and they may not have a complete understanding of the rationale behind why council is doing what it's doing, whether it is will, whether it is a political decision, whether it is regulatory compliance, any one of those sorts of things. But those aren't necessarily constricted by the notion of having a Q&A. I think you can do it any other way, lots of other ways too.
The final story comes from CTV London. The City Council Resourcing Review Task Force is preparing two surveys to inform its upcoming recommendations about city councillor compensation. One survey will gather feedback from the public about expectations of city councillors' availability, whether the role should be considered full-time or part-time, and whether their total compensation is too high, too low, or just about right. Quote, we're actually asking some of the same questions of counselors, and it's going to be interesting to see whether the broader public and the council members are in line with each other or not with respect to what they think a counselor should be doing, how much work they should be doing, how much work they should be putting in, and so on. End quote, explains political science Dr. Martin Horak, who chairs the task force. Now, the second survey will also ask London's 14 councillors about the time they spend on various duties and how many hours they need to be available each week to their constituents. Now, at the same time, city staff have been asked to prepare a background report about council compensation, staff support, and other factors in Ontario's mid-size and large cities. Now, the committee was told it cannot require a councillor to work a minimum number of hours each week. However, they could signal that full-time hours are expected. Now, the base pay of a city councillor in the City of London was $65,138 last year. Ian, very, very simple, quick question. Should municipal leaders be part-time or full-time?
Yes, they definitely should, Chris. There's your simple answer. To me, a lot of it is actually based on the basic question to me is what's the job of a governance board? This is not a group of people who ought to be managing the city. It's not the people who deliver services in the city. This is the group of people who guide the city or oversee it. And if they're doing that, I think there's a significantly less time that's actually required. That said, the legislative time is only one component of what they do. To remain in contact or in touch with the community, they have to be out in the community. And some of that is things like committee meetings, but some of that is showing up at community events and talking to people. Some people who are elected officials will knock on doors. Some will have coffee with the councillor sessions. So there's a wide variety of things that are more or less what would be considered voluntary because they're not legislatively required. Now, London's a big city, so to me, it makes more sense to have this conversation in London than it might in a municipality of 20 or 30,000 people. So that's a longer answer to your really short, basic question.
Are you surprised that the scope of the work, the surveys that they're trying to find out, how many hours should a counselor work? Because every time I speak to a counselor, they always tell me that it's what you put into the job. It's not just those 4 council meetings or 2 council meetings or 1 council meeting a month. It's time preparing for that council meeting. It's time going out to the community. Are you surprised that they're looking at not how much time, but signaling how much time they should be working as a city councilor compared to their other part-time job or technically full-time job as well?
Yeah, for sure. A lot of these people do hold down other jobs. But because of the irregularity of the schedule as a London city councillor, even if it was part-time, it's very hard for them to hold down the afternoon shift at Home Depot because the schedule is just too irregular. So there are very limited other things that an elected official could do. I didn't really like the term signal in here too, because if people are in the job for reasons of public service, they're probably going to put a lot more effort in than they're there for reasons of self-service and just want to be the boss and tell other people what to do. So in that way, I think if you see it as a public service rather than a career, then maybe part-time is the way to go. If you see people who are professional politicians who aspire to greater office, which was kind of our first story, then maybe it makes sense to have more full-time people. I'll also say that we've been involved in quite a few of these efforts in surveys and compensation reviews for elected officials. And we need to separate the expectations of the role with what the role is worth. And until we have a good understanding of the expectations, it's really hard to put a dollar figure on it. And base salary or per diems or stipends or per meeting fees, I mean, they all add up. And depending on how the municipality is structured compensation wise, it's a very different story year over year. The other thing with such a large municipality as London is I would not be surprised if there's a conflation of the conversation around the worth of the elected official, the amount of time they ought to be putting in, and whether the city or whichever, yeah, the city in this case, but any municipality who's having this conversation should be governed at large or whether they should be governed by wards or divisions. Just because it's one thing to have 7 or 9 people who have the same constituency of 100,000 people versus having 8 councillors and a mayor, and the councillors may have a constituency of 5 to 7,000 people, much more manageable. So that also might have an impact on compensation.
It certainly will, and it will be something that we'll be paying attention to as this story unfolds. But we're going to turn our discussion over to our interview with Shiela Keisig, president of the Rural Municipal Administrators Association of Saskatchewan. Welcome to the Political Trenches, local government at work. Today, we are continuing our journey in the municipal leadership realm. Today, we are speaking with Shiela Keisig, president of the Rural Municipal Administrators Association of Saskatchewan. Shiela grew up on a mixed farm south of Keisig, Saskatchewan. She attended Lampman School from K to 12 in Lampman, Saskatchewan. Shiela started her training at the RM of Tullymet, number 216, with the office located between Ituna and Balscares in 2005. After receiving her Rural Class C certificate, she was hired as the administrator of the RM of Tellymet number 216 in November of 2006. Upon the retirement of the previous administrator in May of 2010, Shiela received her Rural Class A certificate. Shiela and her husband Travis farm south of Ituna, where they have 2 grown daughters, both living within an hour of their farm. Between work and the RMAA board, Shiela keeps busy with her farming and her family. Shiela was elected to the board in 2013 as director of Division 1 and elected as vice president in 2020 and now serves as president since 2014. With that, Welcome to the show, Sheila.
Hi, Chris.
So before we get started, I should just ask, how many of those names of those municipalities did I get right and how many did I get wrong?
Uh, Telemet, but that just rolls off our tongue just because as we're used to it. Belcaris.
Balcaris. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So so let's just jump right into the interview. And Sheila, my very first question to you is, can you explain what role RMAA plays in Saskatchewan's rural municipal landscape?
So the RMAA, the Rural Municipal Administrators Association, is made up of 6 directors. We follow the same divisions as SARM does. The 3 South divisions, the 3 North. Each has a director. We have a vice president and a past president and an executive director, as well as the SARM president sits on our board as ex officio. I don't want to say the word oversee because that's a little, it's too much of a, what's the word I'm looking for? We want to make sure we have a mandate that we follow in order to make our members who are rural administrators, in order for them to be able to do their job fully. So the requirement, obviously, to be a member of the RMAA is to have a rural C. So that is basically your entry level. And we are there as a board to, we have our committees that we sit on, and we are there for our members. If they have questions, if they have problems, it gets to be a little bit of a gray area because it seems to be lately the main problems are the council administrator relationships. We can't get involved in those other than provide tools for the administrators to use. We basically, in a nutshell, we just want to see all our members succeed.
It's my turn to jump in a little bit now, if I may. And Saskatchewan, I think, is at least somewhat unique, if that's a term I can use, in how it certifies administrators and CAOs. Can you tell us a little bit about how you become an administrator or a CAO in Saskatchewan?
Sure. So we have 5 classes that you have to take at the U of R under the local government administration course. And after those are complete, or while you're completing those, you can put in your hours, and you need 1,800 hours underneath a mentor. The mentor has to have at least an A certificate or a superior A. Once you've received those hours and your mentor has signed off, you are a C certificate and you are able to work in an RM with no supervision. You just go on. Mm-hmm. After 2 years, you can apply for your A, and the A requires an in-office inspection. So we have inspectors, and it's another arm of our association. They go out to the offices and inspect, and there's a checklist that they go through to make sure that everything, checks and balances, are covered and everybody's doing what they're supposed to do by legislation and whatnot. And that's that. If you want your superior, that's another, I want to say 9 classes and another inspection. So
can you call yourself an administrator without having a certificate?
No.
Can you take on the role?
No. A lot of people, a lot of RMs, if they're needing an administrator to fill that capacity, they're not qualified. It is acting administrator, and you work underneath a permit.
All right. I'd like to switch a bit more broadly now and talk about Saskatchewan as the rural component of Saskatchewan municipal life, and talk a little bit about if you know what might be unique about how rural municipalities or RMs operate in Saskatchewan, where I'm not sure that there are any other provinces or territories that do that. I could be wrong, but you might be unique there too.
We might be. We're still holding on to our rural status, and I've been to the Manitoba conventions. I've been to the Alberta conventions. They're not a whole lot different as in what we do. what our capacity, you know. I'm finding too, though, that as our RMs get bigger, population grows, there's more and more utilities needed.
Can you explain how towns and villages and even cities operate when they're kind of within the boundaries of an RM? Are they separate and apart, or are they
They're,
part of the RM?
yeah, they are completely separate municipalities. We work together a lot with our towns, our villages that are inside our borders, our boundaries, like through recreation, through fire departments, fire associations, policing, public safety, things like that. Libraries, that's another one. Fun fact, Tullymet is the only RM in the province that has no village, no town, no hamlet. It is strictly rural. There is not one urban population in it. So that's pretty unique for mine. However, we have our two towns that we help out, we support with recreation and fire and whatnot. So
Are you seeing the role of administrator being as viable as it was 20 years ago, or are you seeing there's challenges in recruitment and retention of administrators across rural Saskatchewan today?
recruitment is always a tough one that we as a board deal with. I'm going to say about 10 years ago, the big one was retirements. Holy man, like everybody was retiring and then trying to fill these spots. We managed, we got through it, and it sort of settled down a bit. But now we're looking at the next 5 years, we're going to lose a bunch more due to retirement. How do you make this job enticing? We've tried numerous ways. I like looking at it as I was able to work close to home. I was able to put my kids on the bus in the morning for school, go to my job, work with neighbors, work with farmers, work with council that want to do better for their community. And I was still able to get home before the kids got off the bus. Like, it was a perfect setup. And that's what we're trying to, it's a good gig. There's no two ways about it. How we can get that through people to want the rural life. I mean, that's the thing. You're going to want the rural life. That's the bottom line.
There's a sense that in rural parts of the provinces, you're a jack of all trades and a master of none. You're one person doing everything, and there's that sense that it's going to be overwhelming. Do you get that sense that people are looking at that role and going, maybe I shouldn't? Or how do you combat that by saying you actually do have a team of support through RMA to help you through these challenges, that you may not be alone? You actually do have a team supporting you.
That's exactly it. Yes, I am a single office. I learned very quickly. You pick up that phone and you phone your neighbor. You phone your, the person that you had coffee with at convention 3 months ago. You rely on your colleagues a lot. As for, like the network, the peer network, we've always stressed the fact there's always somebody that can help you. And it's just a matter of reaching out. I find, and I don't know, I could age myself here, but I'm finding that the new administrators are they shy to phone their neighbors? Are they afraid? They don't want to look stupid. They don't want to ask a stupid question. Good God, I have asked so many stupid questions in my time. It's okay. We've all been there, right? And I guess that's what I'm wanting to stress to our members. There is no stupid question. Just ask.
I'm about to ask now. Do you think it benefits your administrators that the government asks administrators to go through that certificate program to ensure that they know exactly what they're doing? Because other provinces don't do that. As Ian said, this is very unique, but it gives a leg up, because I've chatted to many CAOs in Alberta or in Manitoba and even some in urban Saskatchewan and say, yeah, I'm so happy that we took that because now I'm able to get a job in Manitoba, Alberta. And while municipal government policies and MGAs may be different from province to province, pretty sure the structure is the same way.
Right. I see great value in it. And just the simple fact that January 1st, 2021, legislation came in that all villages, 100 and less, had to have um, an administrator, a certified administrator. So before, anything under 100 for a village was not required. However, the RMs always had to have. It gives you the knowledge, the like you said, the leg up on things that you have an idea of what you're facing in your career. Um, that being said, I mean, there's plenty of administrators out there that have commerce degrees, that have political science degrees. They've taken the classes, but that's the thing, you still have to take the classes, the 5 classes. Um, it's I like the fact that we do have a higher standard of level in our province. Like not, and I know lots of CAOs in Manitoba and Alberta that are probably way smarter than me talking to them, but we have that standard, and it's just an even standard that you must go through, and I don't see anything wrong with that at all.
Sheila, I'm going to jump in for a moment here around labor mobility. As things have been happening south of the border, we've now talked a lot about how do we transfer or allow transfers of skills amongst jurisdictions in Canada. Are you seeing anything around with your members or even with members of urban municipalities around either restrictions on labor mobility, getting jobs in other provinces, or bringing administrators in from other parts of Canada?
So we've gone through this a few times. I can probably count on 2 hands as I served in vice and now president. We did have administrators come from other provinces for jobs. They went through our board of examiners, for instance. There was a criteria that they had to meet, and once they met that criteria, they were given the go ahead and they were certified. I'm not sure how it is going out of province. I haven't heard anything. I know, like Manitoba, our Manitoba border and Saskatchewan border, it's just like Alberta too, but I always hear more Manitoba because we're closer to that one. Administrators, there's been one come from Manitoba into Saskatchewan. There's been one from Saskatchewan go into Manitoba.
I want to jump in and I want to flip the script because I don't want to think that there's only challenges in the realm of rural municipal administrators. What's the opportunities that you're looking at into the future? Because we talk about the challenges of labor shortages, of people not wanting to get in the field, but there's got to be something on the horizon that gives you hope that the field isn't a dying field that once was a viable option that many people wanted to go into.
I think you're starting to see one of the one of the things that most people looked at. Nobody wants to work alone. Nobody wants to work in an office by themselves. We're starting to see the RMs are getting bigger. There has to be office help. There's so many things going on. There's planning, there's development. So looking forward, I can see that as a great calling card sort of thing. People will want to come. They'll want to set down roots. They'll want to, work in an office where there's a team. We just want to make everything a fun atmosphere, a fun place to work. We want to make sure we're helping administrators in our capacity where we can with relationships with council. To make it more rewarding, because I truly believe it is a rewarding career.
Well, hopefully you can prepare for that. Shiela, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart, from Ian, for sitting down with us and talking. When we connected at SARM, I knew I had to have you on the show to talk about rural leadership. So thank you so much for doing this.
Well, I appreciate it, Chris. That was great meeting you finally. Fangirl.
Our full interview with Shiela, president of the Rural Municipal Administrators Association of Saskatchewan, will be airing next week. We'll be right back. Ian, our interview with Shiela, 3 great stories. It seems like we're back into the groove of things. Leadership is something that we're going to be talking about a lot over the next few weeks, few months, because it is an important factor when it comes to the municipal world. How do you think today's interview went?
I enjoyed the conversation with Sheila. I don't think I've ever met her before. And you and I were talking a little bit offline about how down to earth she seems to be and how committed she seems to be and how passionate she seems to be about what she does. And a lot of that came out through the course of the interview. So I really enjoyed it.
I certainly did too. Now, we're going to be back next week with the full interview with Shiela, but then the following week, we'll be back with a brand new episode. We're going to be sitting down with a municipal CAO who is the CAO of 2 municipalities side by side. So you will not want to miss that. We're going to talk about how dividing leadership in a municipal world can be exciting. But for you, Ian, what do you have planned for the next 2 weeks?
Well, I suspect we'll be recording the next interview while I am on the Rock. I'll be in
Okay.
Newfoundland that week, and it'll be fun to be there. We're putting on that session on for the professional municipal administrators out there on harassment, abuse, and incivility for them, and quite looking forward to that. That starts off a string of travel from, I don't know, from the Northwest Territories to Newfoundland. So we're heading far and wide and doing a whole lot of things coming up shortly.
Well, it seems like you and I are going to be traveling a lot over the next few months, so it's
Yep.
going to be fun to do these on the roads. So until next time, Ian, it's always a pleasure to sit down with you in the political trenches. Looking forward to being back with here in 2 weeks' time with you.
See you in a couple of weeks, Chris.